But first, the analysis of Shields and Brooks. That's syndicated columnist Mark Shields and New York Times columnist David Brooks. That's good. It looks like you're paying attention there.
Yeah, hurry.
All right, so let's start with health care. This week, we started with repeal and replace, and then it went to repeal now, replace later. Neither of those seem to be going anywhere.
The Republican health care plan had three problems. It wasn't healthy, it wasn't caring, and there was no plan. I mean, it was just that simple. I mean, you can't get people to vote for something when they don't, A, know what it is, there's no public case for it. But beyond that, it just, the conservatives, led by Rand Paul, objected that it didn't root out and repeal Obamacare. That was correct. And the moderates, embodied by Susan Collins, whom we just saw in the previous piece, objected that it was going to hurt unnecessarily and gratuitously millions of Americans who are needy and depend on Medicaid. True. So the two were almost irreconcilable. And I think they can't figure out now how to leave the field without embarrassment. Ideally, if you're a Republican, you do not want to vote on this. You do not want to vote Tuesday because it's going to be used against you. It is incredibly unpopular. It's got 16% support in the country. There is not one person of the 213 in the House of Representatives who voted against it who regrets having voted against it. And there are scores of House members in the 217 who voted for it who are nervous that they voted for it. So that's where it is.
Yeah, I don't think it's dead. I think, from what I hear, they're leaning on Mike Lee, the senator who's been a no vote, who was the decisive no vote, to change his mind. They buy him out with something and offer him something, and then they figure once they get him on board, there are probably another 15 Republican senators who would like to vote no, but they don't want to be the one person who kills it. And so the feeling is if you can get Mike Lee, you can get some of the others, and they might pass it. I wouldn't say it's likely, but I just think it's too early to say it's dead now. The second thing to say is Mitch McConnell has two parts of his job. The one is to create a process where reasonable legislation gets promoted, and the second is to whip for that legislation. I think he did an abysmal job on job one and a pretty good job on job two. As Mark said, you got a plan with 16% approval. Nobody in the Senate likes it, including the Republicans. They all hate having to vote for it. And he still got 48 votes. That's kind of impressive. But the underlying problem is you have a chance to reform health care. There are a lot of conservative ideas to reform health care, and that would solve some problems. You could pick some things that a lot of people would like. You could have catastrophic coverage for the 20-odd million people who are still uninsured after Obamacare. You could do offer a lot of things to a lot of people and do it in a conservative way. But that's not what this Republican Party does. They just say, we want to cut Medicaid. And they're unwilling to talk about anything positive, though there are some things in the bill. It's just, what can we take away from you? And what can we take away from the poor and the needy and the children? And it's a publicity and a substantive disaster area that they're just trying to live with.
What about the president's role in this?
The president's role in it is mercurial. He said, let Obamacare founder and burn, and then the next day he says no, within 24 hours, to the Republican senators, you're going to come up with a plan. He knows nothing about the specifics. He knows nothing about the substance. He's made no public case for it. I think David makes a very compelling point. I just say this, that Mitch McConnell had a reputation as this master strategist. And what Mitch McConnell's greatest accomplishment as leader has been is that he denied a hearing to one of the 6th most qualified nominees to the Supreme Court in the last century. That's it. There's a big difference between obstruction and construction and putting together a coalition. And it's a lot easier to get people to vote against something than it is to vote for something and to take a chance. And when you deny the individual mandate, that is that you let healthy young people not pay anything, you leave as a pool of people for insurance who are older and sicker. Therefore, it's going to be more expensive. I mean, you know, this isn't rocket scientist, in spite of the president saying it's a lot more complicated than it is.
I think something important happened with the Republican views of the president. Apparently, they were having all these meetings in the White House, and apparently they would have these substantive meetings with Mike Pence or with somebody else, with staff, and they'd talk through things, they'd try to make some progress, and then the president would dip in and say something extremely stupid, extremely ill-informed, and then they would all groan and live through it and wish he would leave, and then he would go. And so that could be a change in psychology Everybody in the Senate has problems with the president. But if you begin to have, oh, he's just the crazy uncle, he's like a attitude of contempt, then relationships between the Republicans on the Hill and the White House really do begin to change. It's not some guy, oh, he has some political magic. It's some guy who really just is annoying and gets in the way.
Well, let's talk about the interview that he gave to, some people would call it the paper of record, and President Trump calls it the failing New York Times. In this conversation, which is worth reading in its entirety, it's just fascinating. I mean, he lashes out at lots of his supporters. I mean, he undermines his own attorney general. He goes after almost a broadside to Robert Mueller. He talks about blackmail and Comey. What did you glean out of that?
First, our subscription levels have been way up since the Trump era, and one of our journalists tweeted out, we even fail at failing. That's how bad we are. So there are a couple things to say about the interview. One, I was shocked by the lack of just articulateness. You know, we all hate it when we read a transcript of ourselves. It's always embarrassing, but not that embarrassing. These really are random. They're not even thoughts. They're just little word patterns, one following another, about Napoleon, about this and that. It's a disturbing level of incoherent thinking. Second, it is, you know, people who work in the White House work for the guy 16, 20 hours a day. And Jeff Sessions in the administration among them, and to dump over everybody. And then what's interesting to me psychologically, usually when someone's corrupt or they're clever. They try to dissemble. They mask their corruption with some attempt to be dishonest. Donald Trump, give him credit, he's completely transparent. He basically said in that interview, my corruption can be found in my tax returns. If you look in my tax returns, I will fire you. He transmits everything that he's thinking out in public in an incredibly transparent way. So we're looking at the fact where Bob Mueller will probably go to the tax returns. Donald Trump will probably fire Bob Mueller. And then we'll be in some sort of constitutional crisis. And it's all telegraphed right there out in the open.
I was amazed by it. I mean, first of all, I guess just at a personal level, this is a man for whom there is no loyalty, no sense of loyalty at anybody. I mean, Jeff Sessions, whatever one thinks of him, was a Republican senator from Alabama, the first senator in the country to endorse Donald Trump, and a strong supporter. And as Attorney General, all Donald Trump cares about is Jeff Sessions going to protect me? And it shows, I think, a couple of things. It shows the obsession he has with the Russian investigation. There's no two ways about it. I mean, again, he recycles these baseless charges about Jim Comey, that he perjured himself in testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee, which he did not, that he leaked confidential information, which he did not. But there is absolutely no sense of loyalty that he has to anybody else, Donald Trump. And I just find that, you know, we talk about, is there smoke there or whatever. His obsession with the Russian investigation. Now he's back blaming Rod Rosenstein for firing Comey when he went on Lester Holt on NBC News and took credit for it. Said, didn't make any difference what Sessions and Rosenstein recommended. I was going to fire him anyway. You know, so I'm just, there's no coherence to the man, but there is an obsession.
Well, let's talk a little bit about somebody who has been very loyal to the president, Sean Spicer, who stepped down today. He resigned over the announcement that Anthony Scaramucci was going to be named communications director. Scaramucci played it down. He and Spicer and I think Reince Priebus are all scheduled to go on Fox tonight in a sort of unified show, right? But what do you make of it?
Well, I mean, Sean Spicer, prior to going to work for the White House, those of us who dealt with him over the years, he was likable, he was helpful, he was a loyal Republican, but a square shooter. As soon as he made the bargain to go to work for Donald Trump, you know, I don't know if it sold his soul, but he sold part, certainly, of his self-respect. I mean, the very first thing Trump demanded that he do was to go out and lie about the size of the crowd on inauguration, and Sean Spicer did it, and then he lied about the orders that Barack Obama had in fact bugged, wiretapped. President Obama had the headquarters in Donald Trump's building, you know, and then it was that the $3 million undocumented immigrants that voted on election day, and that's why Donald Trump. I mean, so you know, it was tragic to watch this erosion of his own integrity, and he's not a bad guy or anything of the sort, but everybody, I can honestly say, with rare exception, who's been associated with this administration and this president has been diminished by it. Their reputation's been tarnished. They're smaller people as a result of it, and that's tragic.
Does it give you a glimpse into the state of the White House?
Yeah, well, that's the exact point I was going to make. I can't think of anybody whose reputation has been enhanced by going into the Trump administration. Rex Tillerson was a serious businessman, well respected. Jeff Sessions was a serious senator, pretty conservative, but quite serious. Sean Spicer was a normal communications guy in Washington. So he's like an anti-mentor. He takes everybody around him and he makes them worse. And so that's what Spicer had to face, and he'll have to live with that and live with the reputational damage that he's incurred. Scaramucci is a very interesting case. He's a guy from Long Island. Trump is from Queens. They made it big financially in the big city. They have some sort of parallel careers. Scaramucci's a very friendly guy. Everything's sort of like a fun game to him. And I thought his performance today was quite good, actually. And so it could be that he will flourish in this White House. He's very smart. He's not to be intellectually underestimated. It could be he's chief of staff before too long. And we'll see. But he is someone who has a much more deft personal manner as well, while being kind of a wild guy, than anybody else in there right now.
Finally, John McCain, this past week, it was, you know, the entire Senate vote was delayed because of a surgery. That it turned out what they found in that surgery was much more serious.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that John McCain stands alone, and I make no apologies for thinking that highly of him. He, at a time when you look at these people on television, starting with Scaramucci, a bad guy who was a good performance, they're flag lapel pin patriots. John McCain never wore a flag lapel. John McCain didn't wave the flag. He defended it, and he's been a leader in the United States Senate on so many issues, and especially, I mean, not just simply taking on big tobacco and big money, but reaching across the aisle. And de Gaulle said that the cemeteries of Europe are full of indispensable men. I would say John McCain is irreplaceable in our national life, and I just pray that he recovers.
Very briefly, David, just his position in the Senate.
We've covered him a long time, and I think we both think more highly of him. He's a man with intense internal honesty. He sometimes did stuff that was political, but he always knew it. He never lied to himself.
All right, David Brooks, Mark Shields. The transcript of this will be very clear. Thank you both.
Thank you.